How do we solve this equation? 5 over x plus 7 equals 3 over x. 3 over 3. What's the first thing we do? It's been a month since we talked about this, so might want to refresh it. What do you see in this equation that you'd rather not see?
Fractions.
Huh?
Fractions.
Yeah, fractions. And what do fractions have that you'd rather they didn't? Denominators. How do you get rid of denominators in an equation?
Multiply it.
Multiply the whole equation
By the denominator.
by common denominator, right? So we do x times 5 over x plus x times 7 equals x times 3 over x. Okay? Now one thing I don't want to see in the test is cancellation. But the one thing I really don't want to see is incorrect cancellation. And if people start canceling, there's going to be some incorrect cancellation if the opportunity arises. Just experience and deficiencies in courses that teach cancellation. Okay, so, but x times 5 over x is 5, right? You can write that x over 1 times 5 over x, right? Rearrange it to x over x times 5 over 1. You get 5. Then you get 7x, and that equals 3. Okay? And then I'm just going to say etc. because everybody can solve that. Subtract 5 from both sides and divide by 7. I'm not going to take valuable time to do something everybody's going to do right. Okay, so that's one equation. The other equation we want to look at is 3 over x minus 5 plus x minus 1 equals 4. What are we going to do? We're going to multiply everything by x minus 5 because we don't want that denominator there. So we get x minus 5 times 3 over x minus 5 plus x minus 5 times x minus 1 equals x minus 5 times 4. Right? And we know we're going to have x minus 5 over x minus 5 times 3, and that's going to give us 3, and you should write that out, plus x times x minus 1 minus 5 times x minus 1. No shortcuts. X times 4 minus 5 times 4. Because if you take shortcuts, you're going to leave something out. You might not, and you might not, whoever I was thinking about, but somebody will. So don't leave things out. You got no time limit, right, out of everything. Okay, so you got 3 plus x squared minus x minus 5x plus 5 equals 4x minus 20, right? Now you can do that, because clearly distributive law, x times x is this, x times negative 1 is this, right? Probably ought to write an intermediate step there to be safe. I'm going to skip it for now, so I'll put a few dots there saying, yeah, there's an intermediate step you really ought to write out to be sure you're reinforcing everything you need to know. Well, then that's x squared. Now, what do we got? We got negative x minus 5x, so that's minus 6x. 3 and 5 is 8, and that equals 4x minus 20, right? And then we do a little more magic that you need to include. Okay, well, actually, what do you do? How do you solve this from here? What kind of an equation is this? You should recognize this as a quadratic equation. It's got that x squared, it's got x's, right? I mean, there's more to it, but that's kind of the way you recognize it. Then you make sure it fits the definition. How do you solve a quadratic equation? You put the whole thing on one side so it's equal to 0. And then you can apply the quadratic formula if necessary. But if you can factor, you can also do it that way. We're not going to get too tricky with that, but I want you to recognize you have a quadratic equation and be able to use the quadratic formula. Okay? So you subtract the 4x, you get minus 10x, and then you get plus 28 equals 0. And you try to factor this thing, and you say, well, the only factors that'll got to get us close to 10 is an integers would be 7 and 4. But 7 and 4 doesn't make 10, right? So it's minus 11, you could say x minus 7 times x minus 4, couldn't you? Well, if you remember factoring, okay? And you should, because I told you to review it. Turns out this one's not, I don't think, going to have a solution, because I think the discriminant's going to be too big. So that x equals negative of negative 10 plus or minus the square root of negative 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times 28, all divided by 2 times 1. And you know the quadratic formula. One thing you've got to be careful of, quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac and all that, right? A is not negative 10x. A is what's in front of the x in this expression. A is negative 10. If you try to put negative 10x into this thing, then, put your x squared in with the a and everything's going to get to be a mess. And some of you did that on your homework. You identified it, you had it written out beautifully, but then you thought that a was this whole thing, and it isn't. It's the negative 10, right? We want to be careful about that. Then you go ahead and simplify this. You'll find that you get a negative 4, negative 12 under your square root, so you can't do it, but you can still identify the vertex, right? Okay? And that tells you things about the function. Now, for solving the equation, well, you're going to you might do this as, well, you solve the equation. Okay. Okay, the next few problems we did pretty thoroughly early. I'll do those on video and get it posted by the weekend, okay? Just make sure you've got something to go on.